So what's the problem? Well, there's the Bay watershed. We've all seen that picture or something like it. And 7 different states. I chose the oyster harvest because it's such an ubiquitous part of the bay and the bay's history. And as we know, for most of the last century, the take was about 2.5 million bushels a year. And then suddenly, it just drastically declined. And we know that part of that was because of the diseases. But prior to that, we had Hurricane Agnes in 1972, which put huge amounts of sediment into the bay, just like Tropical Storm Lee did in 2011. And there have actually been a number of other storm events that have occurred at fairly regular intervals that have done the same thing. Scouring sediment from the Conowingo Dam and bringing loads of sediment down from Pennsylvania to New York and all the places along the Susquehanna to dump into the bay and literally drown out the oysters. Now I didn't put it in this PowerPoint, and I'm sorry I didn't, because I had a really good table that showed just what happens after each storm event to the oyster harvest. And it declines significantly after each one, to the point where after Tropical Storm Lee, the last take in the upper bay was 183 bushels. I mean, nothing. And, okay, here we go. On the last page, if you've got my report here, on the last page of it, I have the oyster season, 1995-96. The harvest was 26.6 thousand bushels. 1996-97, the year after that storm event, it went down to 2,600 bushels. And then in 1997-98, it jumped back up. Similarly, in 2002, it had gotten up to 18 or almost 19,000 bushels. By 2004, after Hurricane Ivan, it got down to 2,200, and the following year it was down to 1,600 bushels. And then the worst one was Tropical Storm Lee. In 2010-11, the harvest was 6,000 bushels. In 2011 and 12, it was 297 bushels. And in 2013, it was 183 bushels. So after each one of these storm events, there's a huge drop in the oyster take. And it hasn't recovered since Tropical Storm Lee. It has not recovered at all. And these are Upper Bay statistics, by the way. I'm focusing on the Upper Bay because I believe that the Upper Bay is the most heavily impacted by these events. Okay. All right, so the EPA, the State Department of the Environment, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, everybody got together and decided we had to get rid of nitrogen. That nitrogen was the villain here. Now, honestly, you know, I liked hearing what the prior speaker said about nitrogen. These are things that I'm not enough of an expert to know if nitrogen is really that devastating, or phosphorus, but it's irrelevant because they've chosen to focus on that, and more specifically, they've chosen to focus most of their efforts on wastewater treatment plants, stormwater, and septics, which, as you can see, are a minuscule portion of the nitrogen load to the bay. So I don't care what you think about nitrogen. If you decide that nitrogen's the bad guy, wouldn't you want to find a way to get rid of nitrogen in a cost-effective way? They're going to spend at least, and this is a minimum, $14.4 billion in Maryland to attempt to mitigate nitrogen, to a much lesser extent phosphorus, and to an even smaller extent sediments. $14.4 billion between now and 2025 for this much. Now, I don't know if it's a terrible pollutant, but if it is, why would you want to focus on 7% of Maryland's source? Why would you do that? Okay. Now, this is a very useful chart. These are the nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. Could somebody get me a glass of water? Nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment targets for all of the Bay States. And I put it in tons. They put it in pounds, folks, to make it look much, much bigger. I put it in tons. Okay, so nitrogen, the sum total is 34,000 tons. Phosphorus is 2,000 tons. Sediment is 667,000. Thanks a lot. Okay, we don't know how to evaluate that. Well, now we can. Here's the Conowingo, and this is, of course, that widely shared picture of the Conowingo during Tropical Storm Lee. Annually, 2.5 million tons of sediment, 3,300 tons of phosphorus, 71,000 tons of nitrogen to that one source. Oh, look at that. That one source provides more than they're going to focus $14.4 billion on and spend now until 2025 to get rid of. Okay? That's 1 year's supply. And that's just typical flow. Okay, so now here's Tropical Storm Lee with another picture we've all seen of the sediment plume coming down and settling in the Chesapeake Bay. Here it is. Here are the targets from now until 2025, where we're going to spend $14.4 billion. And, actually, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, here it is. This was difficult to get because they don't want to publish these numbers. And Delaware is a maybe number. DC, I don't know what it is. But right there, we're looking at $40 billion, okay? And to get rid of 34,000 tons of nitrogen, 2,000 tons of phosphorus, and 667,000 tons of sediment, when Tropical Storm Lee put out 42,000 tons of nitrogen, 10,000 tons of phosphorus, and 19 million tons of sediment. Okay? So we're going to spend $40 billion for nothing. For nothing. I don't care if you think that the sediments are a good idea or a bad idea. I don't care if phosphorus is a nutrient or a pollutant. I don't care if nitrogen feeds diatoms. I don't know that stuff. I know that we're going to spend $40 billion for no reason at all. Because in another 10 years, of course, the USGS is a regular 10-year cycle, we will have another Tropical Storm Lee. And in the meantime, the Susquehanna, the Conowingo Dam, and the dams above it for that matter, are at their capacity already. And each year they're getting, what is it, George? Another 3 million tons? Each year adding 3 million tons. So if we do nothing and let it sit there, there will be more sediments behind the dam to the tune of 3 million tons a year. And in another 10 years, we will have another storm event like this or worse. And the thing that I do have an opinion on is the sediments. You know, people debate whether or not the sediments are harmful to the oyster population. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That sediment covers the whole upper bay inches and prevents oysters from reproducing. The oysters reproduce on old oyster shell, and all the old oyster shell is buried underneath there. So there's nothing for them to attach to, and no way for them to grow. So right now we are at 183 bushels a year in the northern part of the bay. That's essentially a dead oyster harvest. I mean, it's a dead oyster fishery. And so I don't think that has to happen. And whatever does happen, I certainly don't think we have to be spending, wait a minute, there it is, no, wait, there it is, 40 billion for nothing. I don't think we need to do that. And so I would ask the Maryland Department of the Environment, whose leader conveniently took a powder just before this thing started, not sure why, and the governor and a lot of the legislators, why they're willing to spend $40 billion, or in our case, 14.4, that's plenty enough for me, by the way, for nothing. For nothing. For an effort that will accomplish zero. And that's assuming that they're right, that nitrogen and phosphorus are in fact pollutants, not nutrients, and that we really don't have anything to worry about from the sediments. Okay? So I don't need another argument. I don't need to be a scientist. All I need to look at that is to look at that and say, what a waste. And this is the kind of thing that's killing this state. It's the kind of thing that's making people flee this state in droves. People that are taxpayers anyway. Okay, so this puts it in perspective just for Maryland. I did it for Virginia also. You really have to dig to get this stuff, although they've done a pretty good job in Maryland. Septic tanks. Reduction targets, 575 tons. Cost, $3.7 billion. Cost per ton, $6,434.70. Cost per pound, $3,200 to reduce bay nitrogen by 0.3%. I mean, is it too much to say that's crazy? Stormwater isn't much better. Look at that. 1,000 tons, 0.6% nitrogen abated at a cost of $3,441 per pound. And you know, I'd like to say, you know, that maybe Maryland's the exception, but it's not. But it's not. Virginia is going to spend, and it's really interesting because Virginia put out their costs per pound for nutrient reduction from the various sources like wastewater treatment plants, agriculture, stormwater. But for some reason, the cost per pound for septic tanks wasn't included. And so I just did a little mathematics. They're going to spend $1.6 billion to upgrade septic tanks in Virginia to receive 0.1% reduction in nitrogen between now and 2025. at a cost of $4,242 per pound. So, you know, we don't have any a corner on the market for wild ideas. All the other Bay States are doing a similar thing. And why is that? Well, it's because the EPA has mandated these TMDL targets. And like good little sheep, the various states have gone ahead and followed through and developed their watershed implementation plans to achieve these targets. But nobody's stopped, I don't think, to really ask the EPA if this is really a legitimate use of our money. Now, a couple of counties in Maryland have done just that, because they know that there's something that you can do that a lot of counties don't know that you can do, and that is that you can challenge the EPA about this stuff, because they have no legal authority to command states to do these things. They have no legal authority. The only trouble is, most people don't know that. Most legislators don't know that. I would venture to say most government leaders don't know that. Now, never mind our governor, but he may know, he wouldn't care, excuse me. But in most places, people just do not know the law. And the law says that if you want to challenge this, you can challenge it. You have to go to EPA and demand it. They won't, you know, if you don't say anything, they don't say anything. It goes right forward. But if you say something, they've got to stop. Legally, they have to sit down with you and negotiate. And so that's what we should be doing. At least that's one of the things that we should be doing to stop this madness of spending $14.4 billion at a minimum. That's a minimum, according to the Department of Legislative Services, to stop this lunacy.